and who are the people that are basically change makers and policy creators. Like, who are those people? And we aren't represented at all on the level we should be. The other side to that, and that's definitely a big part of, I think, the chatter with the whole Black Lives Matter and everything, is also hiring processes and recruitment processes and the bias that there is within hiring processes. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm here with the beautiful Lauren. Welcome back to another Career Plug series. As you guys know, I am interviewing loads of successful Black professionals in their field to find out a bit more about their sector so that you guys can learn about what it's really like to work in the different roles. And I know I'm looking a bit dusty right now. I'm not feeling the best today, but it's fine because, you know, Lauren is the main event, so it's all good. So I'll just get straight into it. So Lauren, what is your current job title and how long have you been doing it for? Yeah, sure. So I was explaining sort of off camera that I'm in a bit of a transition. So I've been a talent acquisition manager for about 1.5 years, and I'm now moving into a I'd say like head of people and culture role.
Nice.
It's an interesting one because internally we don't really use job titles, so it's like, yeah, the closest thing to what it would look like externally is that.
Okay.
So yeah,
that's so good. That's so good. So was that always sort of what you wanted to do, being in like the kind of like people ops type?
No, I've totally fallen into this. So you know that I'm a creative. So I've always worked alongside doing like music, and so I'd say for the first half of my 20s, a lot of my jobs that I had, I kind of fell into. So yeah, I started out in sales, and then landed in recruitment, so agency recruitment, which is sales, and then moved to in-house recruitment, and then I've worked my way up from there.
Cool. And how many years have you been in recruitment, well, in your field?
Oh, I've been in recruitment for about 6 years now. 6-7 years.
It's quite a long time. So you've built like a wealth of experience within that time.
Yeah.
And did you go to uni?
I did.
Yeah. And and do you feel like going to uni had like a direct impact on this like direction that you've gotten, or do you feel like it made absolutely no difference? Like whether you went uni or not, you could have done this?
Yeah, I would say, so I did go to uni, but I didn't actually finish my degree. So I went to study law. So I have a certificate of higher education in law, but I didn't complete it. I did 2 years and it really was not for me.
Okay.
But the experience and just the whole uni life is invaluable. Sorry, so I'm so grateful that I got to experience that. But as far as how it impacted my actual career, no. Because when I left uni, not finishing my degree, I feel like everything has been such a journey, but essentially I went to work for, it was Alliance in Leicester at the time, so way back. But I actually, because I studied in Leicester, so I worked for Alliance in Leicester,
right.
And then once I finished, I kind of went back to them and got a job with them. So it's kind of funny because I guess if I wasn't at uni, I wouldn't have had that connection.
Yeah.
But the degree itself didn't contribute to me landing a role as, at the time, as a personal banker.
Cool. No, that makes sense. So what does like a day in the life of your role look like?
Yeah, so like I said, I'm kind of in transition at the moment. So I would say typically I start by checking my emails. We use Slack.
Yeah. Although I'm kind of tired of Slack now, man.
It's a lot, because so for those that aren't familiar with Slack, it's like I guess it's like Microsoft Teams. So it's an internal comms app that you can have on your desktop, your mobile. So I usually check Slack.
Just unraveled. It's fine. We move.
So I usually just start by doing that. A lot of what I do is very much people facing. So quite often I'll have probably at least 2 to 3 meetings a day. They can be meetings related to like my area, so recruitment meetings, meetings with typically our recruiter, my office manager, our head of operations. So a lot of sort of face-to-face. And then the other side of what I do is very much project-based. So the company that I work for,
I'd say we sit sort of in the SME bracket, and there are a lot of things that we don't have like set up. Yeah, so what was I saying? So yeah, a lot of what I do is project based. The company that I work for is still in a period of I would say growth from a process perspective. So the company spent a lot of years being like an organic startup, so not really having processes around HR and recruitment. So when I joined, that was part of what I guess contributed towards. So I implemented processes, and it's the same thing now with our, we call it people operations, but essentially it's HR. So we do have processes, but there definitely is room for them being updated, tightened up, more in line with, you know, compliance and employment law and that sort of thing. So yeah, so a lot of what I do is kind of related to that as well.
That's really good. So like, what would you sort of recommend? Like if I decided tomorrow, right, I want to go down a similar path to you, what like would I need to do as like an entry level person? Is there like qualifications I need to do, or like is there specific experience that I would need? Like what would you recommend?
Yeah, interesting one. So I would say like now sitting within like an HR function, HR is so broad. I would say that if you want an HR career, there's definitely probably more of a specific path as far as what you'd, something probably business related at uni, and then starting out within an admin role and sort of working your way up from there. My side is recruitment, or talent acquisition as it's known as. So, and I think personally it's easier in a sense to get into HR that way, because starting in a recruitment agency, it's sales. You don't necessarily need a degree. It's very much about, can you do the job? Can you sell? How well can you perform? And so once you've got your foot in there, you can then do what I did, which is move to in-house recruitment, which removes the sales aspect from the recruitment process, and you're focused on hiring for that specific company. And from there, again, you can, I think once you're in an HR function, and depending on the type of company you're working for, there's scope for you to go into training, into or being a trainer, into learning and development, into more of an HR focused role. So whether it's employee relations or whatever. So yeah, I'm trying to think if I answered your question.
No, you have. No, you definitely have. Definitely been.
So there's definitely, it's quite broad. It is quite broad, and I think progression also depends on the type of company that you work for, and whether or not you can gain a lot of the experience with that company enough to move on, or whether or not there's room for you to kind of move across different functions. So yeah.
And what does that progression aspect look like? Is there like sort of a standard steps of progression? Like, you know how certain jobs, it's like you do this, then in order to progress you have to be management, or you have to be this, or could you just like progress in your role in itself and just like move through different grades? Like what does progression look like for?
Yeah, so I would say specifically if you're looking at recruitment, and if you're looking at in-house recruitment, I would say you'd start, so entry level looks like support, so a recruitment coordinator. And then the next step up would be actually being a recruiter for the business. And then depending on the organization, the size of the organization, you'd have different sort of middle management within that. So you'd have either a senior recruiter, or somebody who is really responsible for the overall recruitment process. And again, from there, depending on your experience, you did touch on qualifications in the last question, which I didn't answer, but I'm actually doing an HR related qualification. So I'm studying, I'm doing a CIPD in employment law. So you can study, there's different courses that the CIPD body offer that you can take depending on what it is that you want to go into. And then if you're looking at HR, you've got HR advisory roles, you've got HRBP roles, and then the level up would be a senior HR advisor or a head of. So I'd say progress kind of looks typically to, sorry, what is it I'm trying to say?
Don't worry, that's it.
You
basically I think I was asking about like what like progression sort of looks
progression,
like,
that's
and
the
then
word I was
you
looking
basically
for.
just described all the different steps.
Yeah, so I would say that progression is quite similar to other type of roles as well, where it's like, you know, advisory, then a senior level than a head of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's good. It sounds like there's like quite a lot of scope to go in different directions within that area, which is good. It's not like quite boxed in.
No, and I think, sorry, just to add to that as well, I think it just depends on what your skills are and what you enjoy doing. Like I'm a people person. I've always enjoyed like interacting with people, and so early on in my career, sales and customer and client focused roles really suited my personality, and I enjoy working in that way. And what I love about what I do now is that, for me anyway, there's more meaning when you're able to impact a business.
Yeah.
And actually, from an HR perspective, your customers are, in a sense, your employers and the people that you work for, and looking after them and make sure that they're protected and the business is protected. So, I just think it depends on what like your passions are and how you enjoy kind of working.
That's really good to know, actually. It actually kind of moves on to my next question, which is to ask, like, sort of what kind of, would you say, from your experience, perhaps maybe skills and personality traits that you possess, or in general, like, for someone to really succeed in this field, what would you say are the important skills and personality traits they should have? Yeah,
so I'd say specifically for recruitment, I would say that you need to be somebody who enjoys working at a fast pace. And again, that will vary depending on the size of the company, but the job market is very competitive. And as a recruiter, when you are working with things like deadlines, hiring deadlines and pressures from hiring manager, you need to be somebody that can, work quickly and enjoy working at a pace.
Yeah.
So just as an example, when I was actually an estate agent, and for me, like, I loved working in lettings, because lettings is really, it's quite a quick turnaround as opposed to sales, where it's kind of longer with the customer. So I would say that. I would also say being organized. I think sort of the typical thing that you find with most roles. I think organization is key to understand, where you're at in your pipeline if you're looking after a job. Right, yeah, so skills. So the other skill I would say specifically for recruitment is being a good communicator. It's really important that you are able to communicate effectively with candidates, but also with your hiring managers as well, in like things like managing expectations, especially when you're dealing with a hiring manager that wants a job filled tomorrow, or has this long like shopping list of what they want in a candidate and it doesn't exist. So being able to effectively communicate, work to deadlines, and I think thinking about, I guess, my transition as well, being able to kind of understand compliance, specifically if you're looking at like HR.
So if I come in, so as an entry level recruiter or a HR or people person, what's like a typical kind of entry level salary look like?
Yeah, good question. So I would say, so specifically if you're looking at recruitment, it can vary. So it depends on if you're starting out within agency recruitment, because that is sales. Sales equals commission. So what you'd find with a lot of agencies is that there's a lower base salary and a high commission.
Right.
But if you're looking at, like a recruitment coordinator role or recruitment support role that's in-house, it can be anything, if you're in London, from 25,000 up to 32, 33, depending on your experience.
So with that, because I've always been intrigued to understand that recruitment commission thing. Because obviously I've been placed in roles by recruiters. So I'm always like wondering, how much money did you make off me? So like, is there like a fixed sort of structure, or does it vary depending on recruitment, or is there like a percentage? Or
there's a percentage. So it's quite interesting, because I started out as a recruiter in an agency, and then going in-house, it's the other way around. So you become then the client, right?
Yeah.
So most recruitment agencies, and again, this will vary depending on salaries. So typically, the higher the salary, the higher the percentage or the higher the fee. And it will also vary on sector as well.
Right.
So depending on what sector you're in. So what agencies would do is charge a percentage of the annual salary. So say, 20% is what they would charge the client or you as a company.
So how much does the actual person that is that the recruitment agency? That
See,
would get that, or
yeah.
the actual recruiter.
So that's what the agency would get, and then the recruiter. It depends on the agency. So I haven't even. This is so terrible now because I haven't worked in agency recruitment for about 4 or 5 years.
So my idea, because things could have changed.
Yeah. That's a good question. I do want to give an answer though. Hold on 1 second. We can edit this bit out. Yeah, I think what I will say is that so it depends on the agency and how they work. So there could be a placement fee, there could be a percentage on how much business is brought in. So it really does vary.
Okay. So in terms of like going to like, I guess like the higher what am I clapping for? Going to like the higher ends, is there kind of like typical ranges that people could expect in terms of the max they could earn, or is it kind of like an open?
Yeah, open. I mean, within HR, I would say there's money in HR for sure, particularly if you are qualified. I mean, hence why I'm doing my qualification. No, I mean, that's not the only reason, but yeah. But yeah, particularly, I mean, senior, someone who's head of HR, you can earn 6 figures for sure. For sure, and also in that line of work, I think once you reach a certain level, you can also do consultancy-based work.
Yeah, which is like it's usually the case for most things or most sectors. You do kind of like get to a certain place and then you just branch out and
there's money in that. There's money in that. But I'd say typically senior level HR, and again, it depends on the sector and the size of the company, but could be anything from sort of 60 to 80 grand a year, basically.
Yeah, that's good. That's very good. So for you, like, do you feel like you've made any mistakes along your career journey? And if you have, what sort of advice would you give to other people in terms of like how to avoid that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think one thing that I would say, and I think I've always been good with this from a work perspective, but I think sometimes I wish I could have acted on it more. So I would say kind of going with your gut and not staying in an environment that's really toxic. And I would say, I think for me that's really important, because I think sometimes there's this fear that like, I kind of get deep with it, but I just think the system kind of has over you that you've got to be in work. Yes, you need a job. Yes, you need to earn a living, but not at the detriment to your mental health.
Yep, absolutely.
And I've definitely stayed in environments longer than I should have. And I've almost been in this kind of paralyzed with fear moment of not knowing if I could get something better. And I've fortunately snapped myself out of it quicker and moved on. And why I would say that's a mistake is because you're burning yourself down, and you're not putting yourself in a position where you can really give yourself to a company that truly values you. So understanding like that really, I would say, has been and that to go where you're valued, I would say.
That can be quite crippling as well, because you start to mentally kind of feel like, oh, you're not good enough to go anywhere else, because perhaps the company makes you feel like that, so you feel like, oh, well, there's no point in me going somewhere else because I'm not good enough to do that. And it can like really bring out that imposter syndrome, I feel like.
Absolutely. And especially like navigating these spaces, it's like particularly most of my career has been within corporate spaces, apart from this company that I have now, which is why I love it. So I've been here for 2 years, but before then my background was super corporate, and I think navigating those spaces as a woman and as a black woman can be taxing anyway, let alone adding a company that genuinely is toxic, so I would say that
that actually like brings me to my next question in terms of like is there a good balance of men and women in your industry, or do you feel like it's predominantly one way or the other?
So I would say, so for HR tends to be female dominated, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing per se, but there's definitely a lack of diversity massively within those spaces. I think if you're looking at recruitment, I think recruitment is fairly mixed. So
in terms of gender, in terms of ethnicity,
I'd say, so I mean, working in an agency, you can expect to be, I think workspaces, those workspaces and certainly sales tend to be a little bit more male dominated, specifically if you're looking at recruitment, agency recruitment, but by the time you sort of go in-house and you're under an HR function, for the most part they tend to be female dominated spaces.
That's interesting to know. I never really knew that. Okay, and then in terms of like, I suppose, is there like a lot of black people within the HR space?
No, and you know what? I was kind of kicking myself because I was thinking, oh, I wish I'd come with some figures, but there are a couple of networks that I'm a part of. So a couple of like talent acquisition networks for black and ethnic minority people, and the same with HR as well. And quite often for me, when I go to events before lockdown, so when I was going to sort of any work related events or networking within my my industry, and certainly within, so my sector is fintech, so financial services and tech.
Fintech.
Yes. Quite often I'd be like the only black person, maybe like one or two other black people there. Yeah.
I'm trying to think now, like in terms of the HR spaces, because I've always worked in fintech, for the last 5-6 years. So I'm trying to think, what did they look like? Were they black people?
Well, this is it.
I'm probably like racking up, like I'm thinking, okay, now.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I don't think there's any black people in my thing now, you know.
Yeah. HR spaces, and there's definitely, why I'm kicking myself is because there's definitely been reports and there are statistics, there are figures out there that support that. But it's certainly my experience kind of working within, to be honest, most of my career.
I'm actually just thinking about it now, and I've never really thought about it, but I'm actually thinking about it now. And I would say, like, for my last few jobs, I've not had any. Actually, 2 jobs ago, the head of talent acquisition, she was black, actually, and there was a few black people within that space. But prior to that, I think you're right, you know. Yeah,
no, they really are. So part of like my experience anyway, so I had a point in my career for maybe about 1.5 years where I was, longer than that actually, probably just under 2 years, where I was temping and contracting, because I kind of wanted that flexibility because of, you know, my creative life. And what that meant is that I got the opportunity to support different types of recruitment functions. So I did executive search. I worked in executive search. I worked in all sorts of different in-house recruitment functions and supported within like talent acquisition and HR. And so all of those spaces, I was basically used to being the only black woman. I think there's one, I had a short stint at HarperCollins and there were 2 HR BPs and one of them was black.
Okay. So it sounds like more needs to be done in terms of the representation then.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think deeper than that, specifically when it comes to HR, I think a lot of black professionals would probably say that they have like zero faith in their HR functions. And there's a reason for that. Especially when it comes to treatment in the workplace and how things are dealt with and how things are even understood. And whether or not you are working for a company that has people who are responsible for making those changes who even understand that.
That's such a good point. The other day on LinkedIn, like around the time where, you know, everything was just going crazy online, there was a post from someone that was talking about how I don't know if I'm sure you know who Katie Hopkins is. I don't know. The fact that you have to mention her on my channel upsets me, but she's relevant to what I'm going to say. So anyway, her Twitter got deleted obviously after like all this time of her trolling and all of the horrible things that she said. And someone posted about it, basically saying like, you know, her Twitter's been deleted. Like that's great, blah blah blah. And then someone commented basically saying like, you know, I don't see anything problematic that she said that would require for her Twitter to be deleted. And then I just like clicked on the person's thing and why was she like the head of HR or whatever for I don't know what company it was, but I was so tempted to like message the company and be like, this is who you've got representing your HR, and this person doesn't see anything wrong or problematic with what Katie Hopkins says, and this is who you've got leading your HR function. So if someone was to come to that person and be like, I feel racially discriminated because of this, or I feel like victimized because of this, she's just going to be like, oh, I don't see anything problematic with what that person said.
I
mean, believe my eyes.
This is it. So there's 2 parts to that. Firstly, it's not even just how that individual responds, but it's also what are the company's values, right? Like what is the stance that they take when it comes to discrimination on any form, and who are the people that are basically change makers and policy creators, like who are those people? And we aren't represented, and at all on the level we should be. The other side to that, and that's definitely a big part of, I think, the chatter with the whole Black Lives Matter and everything, is also hiring processes and recruitment processes and the bias that there is within hiring processes. And I can definitely, like, I have, like I said, especially when I had that stint where I was kind of supporting different companies, I was kind of a bit of a floater. But I mean, some of the things that I would hear and some of the conversations that I'd be like privy to, and the things that people would say and feel very comfortable to say when it comes to hiring a certain type of person, somebody who is going to culturally fit in. So what's the culture of the company, right? Like, what is the company culture? Is it only going to cater to certain types of people? It's that. So yeah, and it runs rife within a lot of.
So we did like a thing at work about unconscious bias, and all like not all the managers. I think they picked a few management people to like be involved in it to really test our unconscious bias. And it's like, as much as a lot of us will think that we don't do it, they like did like all these different exercises and showed us different images of people and said, what do you think when you look at this person, or what do you think about this, and what do you think about that? And one of them was like a picture of what's that serial killer? I forgot his name. I can't remember his name. If I remember his name, I'll set his name in the side here somewhere. And then like someone, I guess, that didn't recognise him was just like, oh, like, you know, he seems like a really nice man, we like this. And then it was like, he's a serial killer, he used to like rape women and kill them and do all this stuff. And it's like, people often like judge people on face value and like say, oh, this person, because they look like a well put together middle-aged white man, like looks fine, and then this person, like, you know, that like they like kind of assume isn't doing that well for themselves, actually was doing like absolutely amazing. And it was just interesting to see that kind of bias in the room. And I'm like, rah, so is this how you man will be behaving when you're interviewing people? But,
I mean, this is it. And actually, just today, I had a meeting because we basically conducted a survey, like a race-related survey, but open to everybody. And we asked a series of questions around, I don't know whether or not you think the company creates equal opportunities to people of all backgrounds, whether or not you think our hiring process is biased. Like, we asked a series of questions, and just today we were discussing those results.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I'm really fortunate. The company that I work for is great. It's definitely, in a lot of ways, is hands down the best company that I've worked for. And I think, you know, we pride ourselves on being open and being transparent and being welcoming, but I think the downside of that is that we actually haven't checked ourselves because we think that actually we're inclusive.
Yeah, I think a lot of companies are facing that right now. We're having to go back to the drawing board. My company's doing the same thing. I think a lot of companies are having to go back to the drawing board.
Yeah, it's important work, and I'm really excited to be a part of that, especially with what I'm doing now. So yeah,
no, that's so good. And I guess, like, just as a final question, like, what sort of tips would you give to people who want to kind of embark on a similar career path to you? Like, what would you have liked to have heard back then?
Such a hard one, because I've totally fallen into this. I think what I would say is, I think be clear on what it is that you want. And I think that would have saved me. I feel like I'm landing on my feet career-wise in my early 30s. And I think it would have saved me if I had been really clear on kind of what it was I want. Even though I have my passion outside of work, you still need to like earn money, and you still need to be here, like, you know, 5 days a week. So I would say be clear on what you want. And also, I'd say a few things depending on what level you're at with your career. So I'd say that if you are in an entry level position, make sure that you're getting the best out of your role and the company, and you're getting as much experience for you to either move on to somewhere else, or depending on what the opportunities are like within your company, for you to progress. So yeah, just always kind of have at the back of your head like a plan on where you want to be, kind of going forward. So I would say, definitely being clear on what it is that you want, and make sure that you're doing something that brings the best out of you. So all of your natural skill sets are being utilized. Don't take something because of, I don't know, either a like really shiny salary,
So key.
Because listen, like that money coming in every month won't matter if you're miserable.
Yeah.
So yeah, make sure that you're doing something that kind of brings the best out. So there's something that you enjoy about it, especially if you're someone like me who also has passions like outside of or things that you're really excited about outside of work. So you've also got to make sure that what you're doing, like, you enjoy.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, if you're somebody that wants to progress and chase the ladder, do a qualification, like, if you can, something that will aid you getting there. Big gem, network.
Yeah.
And keeping good relationships, because I tell you, that has been the key to everything. Like, every role that I have gotten has been off of the back of me either being recommended or known.
Same.
Like, and I've been, like, it saved me. Like, build relationships with your recruiters, build relationships with recruiters.
Yeah.
Like, if, God forbid, something was to happen tomorrow, I have at least 3-4 recruiters that I know that I can go to and pick up the phone and be like, help.
Yeah. And the industries, a lot of industries are so small. Like, people are constantly getting on the phone to one another and being like, hey, like, you know, like, you've worked with Lauren before, what do you think? And I always say that to people, like, even in my field, it's the same thing. Like, and that's why I always say to people, even if you really dislike your job, you dislike your management, try to just leave with your head held high and know that, like, because you just don't know, like, when...
Don't burn bridges. That is, actually, I feel like that would probably... I started somewhere else, this would be my number one, like, do not burn bridges. It's funny you say that, because when I was kind of floating, and then I kind of went through a period where I was like, oh, I really do want to find something a bit more long-term. And I got a contract with Standard Chartered Bank. And how I even got in there is because the recruiter recognised my old workplace, and one of her school mums basically also worked there as well with me.
See, imagine she spoke to that person, they were like, oh, that Lauren, she's lazy, you know.
Right, so she literally picked up the phone and was like, oh, like, I see, and I think she had just left as well, so did you used to, like, work with Lauren, basically, what was she like? And that's kind of how I got the interview. And actually, that same person saved me again at Standard Chartered Bank when... basically my team were being threatened with, like, redundancies. So I kind of got moved to a whole other part of, like, kind of out of recruitment and HR into, like, a project, and that tied me over until I went back into recruitment.
Okay.
So that's been a major key for me, like, build relationships, network, engage with people that are able to help you get to where it is that you want to be, and don't burn bridges.
Networking is so key. That's how I even got my job now. Like, because, like, my current manager now used to be the head of department like 2 or 3 jobs ago. And then, like, when this role came up, she remembered me. She was like, oh, yeah, Shay, you'd be good for this. Like, so, yeah, I always say, like, you just never know when, like, opportunities are going to then come back around. So definitely don't burn bridges. Always make sure you're working hard and you're showing the best of, like, your ability no matter what, because you don't know, like, if in the future that's going to come back and bless you. That's one thing I've definitely learned. So that's such good advice. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Thank you so much for coming on my channel. I really enjoy having these conversations, and I just think, like, I just hope that everybody, like, kind of learns as much as I have. It's been a great opportunity for me to learn about different sectors, and also to kind of, like, give that encouragement that people can do whatever they want to do, and people can succeed in different career fields as well. And, you know, like, everyone I've been talking to has been doing so good in their job, and they're, like, in really good position. So I just want to show that this is possible. Like, she's, like, head of people ops. It's possible. So thank you so much for coming on my channel. And if you guys have questions for Lauren, like, specifically about her background or anything she might have said that you want a bit more insight on, if you just leave your comments below, and then I will definitely get those to her and answer those questions for you. But thank you guys, and make sure that you stay tuned for another episode of the Career Plug series. But until the next video.